an organization of residents of Princeton Borough and Township with diverse backgrounds, interests, and talents. Princeton Future has grown out of a concern that much of the planning and proposed development of the critical downtown spaces have been proceeding in an unconnected manner. The aim of Princeton Future is to assist the municipal authority to take a forward-looking and more comprehensive approach. Investigation and consultation undertaken by Princeton Future indicates that these objectives are achievable with good planning. More detailed studies and further involvement of all concerned parties are, however, clearly called for.
Okay.
Only location, we're probably the left side when it comes to
Right, no, I'm looking at it this way, I know. Okay, let's go on to the rest. We're almost finished. This is the last one. Where there is specificity, I must say, and it's not general master plan kind of planning. Planning of hospital property should be considered in terms of community needs and desires. Part of our introduction. The following needs have been mentioned in the public meetings: senior and affordable housing, public gathering spaces, small-scale local service retail, social service facilities. Additional properties that should be considered in conjunction with planning for the hospital site are: Harris Road houses should be returned to single-family residences and individual ownership. Franklin Avenue parking lot, which might provide additional housing and public paths. And Merrick, which could serve as a possible site for continuing care retirement community.
Break your hand out, Yana.
Well, yes, that's why I stated.
We got that.
I stated
Henry's
that this was.
Okay.
Number 3 is a real outlier in all of this.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking of Witherspoon Street, and you take Merwick
Well, we
and
jump.
throw it in. It really is not a sensible thing to do.
Well, they're considering all
I
of
think
it.
it's absolutely
I was
essential
gonna
because
agree.
we're talking an institution, and that's part of that institution. I think it's absolutely appropriate. We've avoided it because it may arouse some ires across the road.
No, I don't.
But I think it's absolutely a part of this whole context.
I think that's a wonderful use for the Merwick space, so I'm not
Wait a
disagreeing
minute.
with the concept. But we don't want to confuse Witherspoon Street with either Library Place or Merwick.
Well,
I think you do. That was the intent of my question earlier on. Whether those factors as described prior to it, or you can hear me, whether those factors as described that we discussed are also applicable to the library place of the world.
Everything is applicable.
No, it isn't. You folks don't interpret that as zoning members, though. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Actually, I see a consistency. This is about the hospital and the hospital site. The healthcare task force did a report on the hospital, and you mentioned Merrick.
Over my dead body.
That's also my son.
You had a decision.
We're not ganging up on you, Roy.
This is a
You
one-point
want that
agreement.
part of the task force's report?
It's a revenue source. That's the
But if there is a total expectation, it should not be found only at this site. The hospital owns other properties. They've made decisions that they don't want to run a nursing care rehab center such as Merwick anymore. They're willing to get rid of that right now, matter of fact. There are other properties, and so they should look at all of them. This is not to be considered as the big cash, windfall site.
Mr. Royce's point about whether that belongs in this particular study, in my view, yes and no. I think maybe it's a 7 that other sites that will, the same thinking should apply to other properties by the hospital, but perhaps lumping it with the Witherspoon Hospital property is confusing. To answer yours, as an John Street resident, I'm incredibly interested and concerned about what happens on Merwick and Steinworth and why, and I think the same concerns for what is good for the neighbors and the neighborhoods and the community should apply. And of course, I start jumping up and down and saying, CCRC 300 units, hundreds of cars going in and out of that site. Wait a minute. So I think maybe that sort of language of concern belongs in this document, but maybe not directly applicable to that block on Witherspoon.
if I can comment, I think you're right. And the reason I make this point is that we really need to focus on what advice we're going to give the planning board so that they take to the municipal governments, who are the decision makers, the right sort of stuff. I think that if you're worrying about the hospital site, the more focused you can be on that and its impact north and south of it on the Witherspoon Street development and consequently on what John Street and the houses on the other side suffer from, the better the zoning changes you're going to be able to negotiate. I agree with you that the Merwick site is another important site. It could be 1 acre lots for expensive houses, or it could be something entirely different. And definitely, if the university is thinking about doing something with Stanford, which I believe they are not really, and if the Y is thinking of doing something, then to look at that part of the town, which is a very important and potentially very fragile part of town, entry that could be destroyed just like that. I just think that it's better to deal with that separately with a slightly different focus on that. That's
We're going to all be here for the whatever Zone X study next year.
Okay, Bob Getty speaking. I'm sure that while I was out trying to get coffee, you settled some problems. It seems to me that there are a number of issues that we should think about. Jim Freud raised that kind of issue. First of all, we're concerned not only with development, which has to do with what happens to the hospital site, but with conservation. And it's just as important to think about the conservation, historical conservation, in the next few years as development. Now, having said that, and I'm sitting next to Wanda here, the historical conservation, historical preservation movement has been extremely successful in Princeton and elsewhere in the country with respect to buildings and streets and so forth, but not so much at all, to my knowledge, with respect to the human dimension of it, the preservation of neighborhoods or the preservation of streets. And what we're faced here is with a preservation looking backwards, development looking forward combination. Having said that, I'm very skeptical of zoning. Sorry, nothing to do with the zoning board of the tenure. I'm very skeptical about zoning as the way to work on that in terms of the public interest. There are, I'm sure there are other ways that it could be done other than through zoning. And I believe what we need is help from very knowledgeable people. There are people, mostly coming from the legal profession, but somewhat from the planning profession, whose work has been on the conservation as well as the development of areas. And just as we get, as I understand it, there's going to be a consultant for the hospital to think about its future, it seems to me we need that kind of professional help on how to conserve and develop an area. Now, having said that, I wish Jim was still here. Speak to it or others. Is Jim here?
I wouldn't leave when you were talking about it.
I would. Okay. The issue of Witherspoon Street is whether it's special or not. I know the historical and the sociological and other contexts within which you raise that question, Jim. But there are areas of a community, parts of a community, which are unique and should be looked at uniquely. Should be looked at for what they are and have been in the past. Witherspoon Street deserves to be looked at not as if it were just another part of Princeton, but it's a very special part of Princeton. And we can go through all the reasons why that's the case. The institutions on it, the history of it, the variety of neighborhoods and uses. So I think a way should be found to plan its future as a unique place, and not that it is just another part of town. It's a very special place. I think it needs a special defense. Curiously, and here some of you will get angry about this, but when urban redevelopment started as a way of building cities after the Second World War, it went off the tracks with respect to some of the human dimensions of it, and human renewal, urban renewal, and all of that. But the notion of the redevelopment acts, as I understand it, was that there could be zones of a district which were planned very uniquely. The only example I have had, which really I think succeeded, was Society Hill in Philadelphia, which was not done by means of zoning, but was done by means of illustrative site plans. The community got together, discussed it, and decided that's what it wanted. It didn't do it through zoning. I wonder whether we have come to the point where we need to have that kind of professional help. In fact, Princeton Future, Michael and Yaina proposed in their first outline to have Norrin Marcus, who's a specialist in the legal planning side of conservation as well as development, work with the team. And that the more I hear what you're talking about today, you come to the point of needing it. I wonder if it would be possible to see the financial aid from the borough to hire Norman or someone like that who could help us on these kinds of procedural questions.
Hi, I'd just like to return to a previous topic. And I'm just pointing out a bit of an anomaly, I think, under item 5. I think what I probably am doing is agreeing with a person who is worrying about too much specificity. Because 5A essentially says that a CCRC is developed with an economy of scale that would be inappropriate for the hospital site, which, and then the Merwick, which I believe is 9 acres, maybe 2 acres smaller than that site, is identified as a possible site for a CCRC. So there's a contradiction there, and I think it would be, at least if a CCRC is going to be mentioned, the principle ought to be expressed that any CCRC should be developed with an economy of scale that is appropriate for the site.
Right. I think the Merwick site and the hospital site, less its houses on Harris Road, are about 9 acres.
It's the content. What was said there, though, is a way of phrasing it so that it works.
Right, exactly. Even though other factors other than the site size also come into.
Thank you. Jeff Fury. See, we have major conflict coming in here between the hospital and what the people are looking for. They're looking for maximum income out of this property. We got to emphasize to the hospital. The hospital originally started for Princeton. People gave a lot of money for the hospital, et cetera, for its betterment for the community. The hospital has become so successful that 76% or 70+% of its revenue is coming in, let's say not revenue, but their patients are coming in from out of town, particularly to the east of us, I believe. Therefore, the hospital's got to really realize the next use has to be for the community, because how they ever got all their money to develop where they are now came from the community. And the community will back them again. They have to just say, hey guys, this is, you were established for the community, you still are, you've made a decision, you want to move. And that has to be, I think, reinforced to them. because they're just saying, we need money, we need money. And it has to be emphasized in our opening paragraphs, I think,
Correct.
a little stronger.
Oh, you would like it stronger? Well,
Yes.
Certainly.
I think a little stronger.
Any
You would like me to
verbiage
submit language?
you'd
I
like
would be
to?
loved.
Okay. Thank you. I think everyone agrees with the point, so
Yes.
stronger is fine.
I'd like to go back to what Bob Getty said. I think that's an interesting point, and I think that complex problems deserve multiple prong approaches. However, I'm not in favor of discarding the zoning approach in favor of only taking this other tack. And the reason I'm not in favor of that is because of what happened with urban redevelopment. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So the problem is what actually happened in the vast majority of cases. You know, Society Hill is
I'm not talking about urban redevelopment. I'm trying to find a new way of doing it.
right, and I'm just saying that that new way is maybe a good idea as an overlay, but I don't think that we can relinquish our efforts on zoning. And the reason I don't think that is based on, you know, history and what has happened in history. And the reality is, it's not just this idealized problem that we're trying to solve. There are many political forces and economic forces that come to bear. And the people who live in these neighborhoods are not the people with the political and economic power in this town. And so we have to be honest about this. We have to see what the situation is for what it is, and that is that there are people who are wealthier and more powerful in this, politically placed in this community, who do not necessarily share our vision for Witherspoon. And so we must use every tool in the toolbox, including new ones that we might develop, in order to secure the needs of our neighborhoods.
Well, Norman Marcus is a zoning expert. I think that was the intent.
Andy, two things. One, that's precisely why Princeton Future exists. Precisely. Because that's the only way in which you can have an open door, bring everyone together. And secondly, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, that's the reason. And secondly, in questioning, being skeptical about zoning, I didn't say you ignore it. I'm just saying there must be ways in which communities can be preserved, not just villages.
Right.
Could we go back to number 6?
You'd like to go back to number 6? Okay.
Number 1.
Right.
Harris Road houses are single-family residences. They are not being used as such, but I don't like the wording on that. Should be returned to. They are single-family residences. The hospital is allowing them to fall down. That's an issue. And it shouldn't be should return. It should be must return.
Okay.
Harris Road must be returned to a neighborhood.
Well, the use must be returned.
Yeah, you do need to say single family. It's maybe in a structure, still in a.
They are single-family residences.
But they are not
But they're not
lived in,
being
so we
used.
want them to
Right.
function as single-family residences, not just look like
And the
one.
word
That's
of
language
needs to
says
be
that.
changed.
Oh, okay.
It's my
The
opinion.
structures are still single family, but the uses are not, so we
Absolutely.
want to.
It could say just residential use rather than residences.
Yeah.
Yes.
It could say
Yes, thank you.
return
Right.
to individual ownership and used as single-family residences, so if you just switch the
Right.
two. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Well, are there any other comments on anything that we've discussed in this document? Nothing's left on the screen.
Michael,
Oh.
can you talk about the next steps? What are the next
Right.
steps?
Well,
Or Yana?
Yeah.
All of us?
yeah, no,
Well, let me answer John's first statement, which said, what do we do and how can we move this into a concurrence mode with the community, because that was one of the words used. We'd like to put this into a document that can be endorsed by the community. And of course, there's a group present here, that's the advisory committee who drafted much of this, but the entire community. So we really want to have it put on the airwaves via the TV 30 in terms of the discussion, as well as the actual document. And perhaps it is presented in a form of, and possibly newspaper, as a petition type of document. It's recognized that it's difficult for the community to attend the procedural, modes that the zoning board and the planning board work on in terms of meeting times for discussion. There is supposed to be, I think it's March 29th, the first master plan subcommittee meeting of the planning board to discuss the healthcare task force's recommendations, which put on the shoulders much of the work on the planning board, or for the responsibility of the planning board. So that is intended to be a public meeting, but it's Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, or one of the mornings, and that's when they're held. So that we have to find other ways to.
I have an idea.
Well, good. Okay. Go right ahead, Joanna. Would you like to?
Okay. We published it. We asked Packet and Topics publish it with appeal for responses sent to email to wherever, Princeton Future, the newspapers, and after the text we also say this will be presented to whoever, health task force, planning board, zoning boards, whatever, both councils, township and a borough, and so everybody knows. And then that should get us some letters, that should get us a lot of emails. There'll be more discussion that any of us want to codify into a response, and hopefully there'll be more discussion then. And I think then we're making it as public, short of having it on a ballot somewhere in a voting that I can imagine. Does that sound like a reasonable start?
It certainly does. I think the other aspect is that
yes,
we have, we will make notice of meetings that you can attend if you're able to, that will discuss it, because presence is important as well. So, and some are in the evening. There was the planning board meeting, although it was not intended to have a public speaking session, but Heidi and Ms. Carr were able to speak. So that's part of what we're doing, just with this hospital piece, because it's urgency. But we're moving on with the Witherspoon Street corridor study in developing our matrix for the central area, which is inclusive of this area, and doing designs. Now, we have originally scheduled a meeting March 12th, and Michael will tell you more about what perhaps that is not well suited in our progress level. It's probably too soon. So we'll have to do a lot more communication via email, the press, and through TV 30 on repeat sessions. We have March 12th scheduled as a meeting, along with April 16th, I think, and then the final meeting is actually in May. So we've got a lot of work, since this was the input part of the program and the project, to come back with not only the words, also some graphics that illustrate some of those concepts, and there are options, many. Michael, would you go into what your thinking is now on that?
Yes, I mean, if you look at that drawing right there, that sort of that summarizes. I have to stop saying sort of. I've noticed that all my students say sort of every other word, so I started to pick it up. Excuse me. That summarizes in very generic form the fact that we wish the site to be primarily residential, that there's a public space, there's a green something or other, and it's divided up and that it links itself with the rest of the street. And that's diagrammatically shown here. We've also been working in trying to put in graphic form, that then could be part of a final report, the initial results of our meetings about the whole street. The hospital, of course, has been the most moving of targets in our series of discussions, in the sense that during our series of meetings, they actually announced that they were going to move. So we, in a way, have altered what we thought we might be able to be doing today and next week, which would have been an overview of everything, whereas we're taking today to overview what we think is the most significant aspect of what the community has addressed, which is the hospital site, or the hospital properties, which is maybe a better way of putting it, because they see them as one, I'm sure. So in that sense, we would like to come back in the next month scheduled meeting, on the April meeting, with more update on the whole street, into which we would be able to show you some images, we hope, of what the hospital site could be. Having sketched out, and Joanna has sketched out some too, and we'd like the team to pay more attention to this, we are convinced that there are possibilities that can result from these parameters. And if anyone would like to contribute to those visualizations, please get in touch with us to do so. So that it's possible that there are a whole variety of approaches that we could suggest as images of what might happen, the what-ifs that we have provided in the past, so that it does not remain merely verbal. I do believe that we would like also to have initial zoning language that would address each of the suggestions, in the sense that it would show what might be the implications for the zoning of any design that we put forward. I think that is a good suggestion. The municipalities and the planning boards are used to working with that, and I think it's our responsibility to address that as well. So our next meeting would be the scheduled meeting on April...
It's a Saturday morning.
The Saturday morning meeting on April 16th.
May I just one thing? I think our job is not only to hold our public officials' feet to the fire, so to speak, but also to carry the message to our neighbors. There have been maybe 200 of us coming, not all the time, but frequently, to these meetings. Few thousand hopefully read the paper and say, oh, well, okay. I think coffee clutches on a block is another way to reach out to people, and we should be doing it as individuals. And parallel question about the website, and is that a tool for communication as well? I think somebody's working on our website.
Right.
Okay.
And much of this will be on there as a website email address, so that while you're on it, you can make your comments, and that's probably the best mode for many.
Look up things on the website.
Exactly. There are links.
Joanna, the good thing that is happening in this town as we all get to become more participatory is that TV 30 is coming to life on this project, and beginning this Wednesday at 10 o'clock at night, the Princeton Future meetings are in prime time, so that you can spend the hour before you go to sleep watching these meetings, all of them, in a row, 1 hour a week from now until the summer. And it might be that it's a wonderful way to end your day listening to Joanna and Hendrix and Ina.
What's this competing with?
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, everyone.